Are you ready? It is time for another episode of Broad Street and Beyond, where everything Philly sports and Central PA is in play. We leave those New York sports in the penalty box. And now, here's Chase and JT.
And welcome to another special edition of Broad Street and Beyond. We call this one the interview sessions, where, of course, we bring you closer to the game with those folks that live it day in and day out. Of course, my co-host, JT, is right there. JT, say hello to everybody, please.
Hello, everyone.
That was a good, warm welcome, JT. I love it. I love it. I love it. Happy Thursday, everybody. We got a real good one here today, a special one. In fact, he's celebrating his 10th season with the Hershey Bears. Just called his 500th career game with the Bears last season. And in addition, he has also filled in for John Walton, calling games for the NHL affiliate of the Hershey Bears, the Washington Capitals. And to answer your question, yes, he has called several Alex Ovechkin goals as well. We are pleased to have here on the podcast radio play-by-play broadcaster for the Chocolate and White. We could not be more excited to have Zack Fisch on the show. Thanks for the time there, Zach. Appreciate it.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Thanks for that wonderful introduction as well. It's a pleasure to be here and love what I get to do with the Bears. 10 years, 10 seasons has gone really, really quick. And, you know, I've grown up a lot in my time here in Hershey and got 2 kids now and been lucky to celebrate the success that the Bears have. So I pinch myself every day still coming to the rink and working for this proud organization, but excited to chat with you guys and enjoyed the work that you've done on the show so far and following the footsteps of some pretty good people here on the air and on the show too, so I better be on my A game in the next bit we have here.
We really appreciate you joining us here, Zach. We certainly do. We love your calls, of course, on the Hershey Bears Radio Network. Zach, the best place to start, pretty much at the beginning. The Bears started off a little slow this season, started off with 2 straight losses to the Crunch to start. Through the first 5 games, they started 1-4, 7-4 in the month of November. Very young team with a lot of new faces on that bench this season, new coach. Lost last night to a tough Bruins squad. Face them again on Friday coming up. What have you seen here from the Hershey Bears in the first 2 months of the season? Just give us your little synopsis of the season so far up to this point.
Team that's kind of finding their footing right now and has dealt with a lot of roster moves as well and injuries and call-ups, and among all that, just a lot of young players. I think it's 15 rookies the team has used in some way, shape, or form, and a lot of those guys are being heavily relied upon as key parts of the team's success. Both Ilya Protas and Andrew Crystal are 1-2 in scoring for the team. There's been some changes to the roster, departures they didn't expect, guys called up that haven't come back, like Ethan Frank, Sheldon Rempel going overseas. Those 2 guys were likely going to be a big part of the offensive attack for the team, and now they're gone, so other guys have to step up, and we've seen that with the likes of Leeson and some of the young players as well. But, you know, a team that's kind of up and down because young mistakes do happen, but I think they don't quite know how good they could be. Derek King, the head coach of the team in his first year, has told the guys that before. Hey, you guys got a lot of potential. We got to figure it out. We got to put it together for 60 minutes every night. But if we get everybody on the same page and get dialed in here, hopefully come March, April playoff time, you're hitting your stride a little bit. So hasn't been the best homestand record-wise in this 9-game homestand the team's on. That's a franchise record, by the way. So rewriting the record books with the longest homestand in team history. But just 2-4 going into the weekend on the homestand. So hoping we can finish it strong a little bit with a group right now that's kind of learning on the fly, and there definitely will be lumps and growing pains, and we've seen that at times, but we've also seen the flashes of the potential, which is really exciting to see when this team hits their stride where they're going to end up.
Back one player that obviously you just mentioned, Protas, it's really caught people's eyes. He's off to a terrific start, leading the team. He scored his 11th goal last night. I believe that's 10 assists he has as well. Bears fans obviously remember his older brother, Alexei Protas, who I think has really blossomed into a nice player for the Caps. What do you see from Ilya Protas? What does he bring? And do you see any similarities whatsoever to the way he plays as to how Alexei played when he was down here?
Pretty spitting image of his brother in a lot of ways, not only looks-wise, personality, although I think Ilya being over in North America for a little bit now as a little bit bigger personality than Alexei did coming here and just kind of getting acclimated really for the first time. Ilya's a great kid, just 19, and I keep saying the sky's the limit for him, but I think he's going to continue to grow and develop. There's not a rush to get him to the NHL. I'm sure at some point this year they'll find a way to get him an opportunity because he's earned it and earns that look, but things are going pretty well in Washington right now, and he needs to continue getting better. It's about consistency when you're a young player, and we saw it from him with a 7-game goal-scoring streak, which is one of the longest scoring streaks for a rookie in franchise history from what we've been able to gather back looking through the record books. And he's been a catalyst offensively, and he can do some crazy things with a puck for a player at that age. So compared to Alexei at this age in the American Hockey League, I think he's more advanced as far as offense goes, which is scary because we're talking about a guy that's gone on to be a 30-goal scorer in the National Hockey League and a huge part of the Capitals' attack. But Ilya, I think, has a little bit more potential as far as the offensive side of his game goes if it translates up at the NHL level. We've seen him put the puck between his legs. We've seen him put the puck on his hip and drive to the goal. And he's not a guy necessarily that gets tossed around out there. He's lanky, still can put on a little bit more weight. If you look at Alexei and Ilya next to each other, Alexei's clearly been in the weight room a lot more. He's just a little thicker as far as everything goes, and I know Ilya will get there, but this is a kid that I think is going to have a long National Hockey League career, and he's just got such a good personality, and he's very, very coachable. Sometimes young kids come in, and they've always been the big fish in a small pond, and it takes a little bit to adjust. Not only has he not had that time to adjust, he's adjusted on the fly and been able to put up points, but the coaching staff trusts him in late game situations, which says a lot about a kid that's not even 20 yet. So really impressed by him. I think he's one of the best young players I've seen in my 10 years here. And we'll enjoy him while we got him because he's going to be a real good Washington Capital sometime in the near future.
One thing Hershey has always had, Zach, is good goaltending. Going back even 20, 30 years, they've always had the good goaltending. Indeed, they have it again this year with, of course, Stevenson, Garen Bjorklund there. Been outstanding in it. Now Mitch Gibson is in the mix with Bjorklund up with the Caps. Talk about their play this season, too. There's also talk maybe Stevenson, Bjorklund are going to switch maybe today with Stevenson maybe going back up with the Caps. Has that happened, and what are you seeing from the goaltending this year where they've been kind of saving the Bears sometimes in these games and the close games as well?
Yeah, you're right on that goaltending has been so good, and that even predates my time in Hershey to really the start of this affiliation with the Capitals, and even before that, some legends like Ron Hextall that have come through Hershey. But since the Caps took over 20 years ago, there's always been great goaltending prospects, and they let them marinate here in Hershey. So good tandem this year. Clay Stevenson, we know what he can do his rookie season. He tied a franchise record with 7 shutouts, and he was still the understudy that year to Hunter Shepard, who, of course, is one of the greatest goalies in our time and in franchise history with what he did in the cup runs the last couple of years. But now it's Stevenson's time to shine. Coming into last night, didn't go his way, even though he played well. Michael DiPietro is just that much better. He's one of the best goalies in the league for Providence. But Stevenson had won 6 of 7 coming into last night's game. He had 2 or less in all those contests, and really single-handedly, I think, had gotten the Bears across the finish line in some of those games with real strong performances and real timely saves. And that's what I think the expectation is for him, not every night, but to give the team a chance to win, and I think he does that. He did it in yesterday's game right now. So he's the number 3 goaltender for the Capitals. There is a little bit of the interesting scenario that he does require waivers. There's a lot of chatter that he might get picked up on waivers. Luckily for the Bears and Caps, he made it through. Sounds like Charlie Lindgren was on the ice this morning for Washington. We're not privy to too much injury updates from the Capitals, but he does have to wait 7 days to get off the IR. So we thought maybe Clay would be gone for a little bit longer than it seems like he might be up there. So Garen Bjorklund's still up there for the time being. Clay practiced with the team this morning. It looks like Bjorklund probably the backup goaltender tonight with Lindgren still on the IR. And imagine they'll reassess where Charlie Lindgren's at when he's eligible to come off the IR with the Bears playing a couple games this weekend. So I think the initial plan maybe was to flip-flop those guys, but good news on the injury front, at least with Lindgren being on the ice. We'll see what changes there. But Bjorklund's been good as well. Real hot start. A couple in a row that hasn't gone his way, that I think he's just trying to clamp down and lock in and be consistent the American Hockey League level, but very athletic goaltender. Very different than Clay Stevenson, who is really technically solid with his game. And when he's on, everything is fluid, a bit not robotic in a bad way, but he's just technically sound, while Bjorklund sometimes flopping all over the ice, but he gets the job done and is a very athletic, agile goaltender. So for him, I think it's just finding that consistency of stringing together a handful of good starts in a row, but he plays the puck well. He's very, very good with the goaltending staff on improving his game, and he's gone from kind of being forgotten on the depth chart to being the number 4 goaltender in the Capitals organization. And there's a lot of belief in Mitch Gibson, too. He's only 4-0 in his time with the Bears. Injuries kind of slowed him down the last couple of years, particularly last year, but very comfortable if he's got to go in the net this weekend or any time this season. And I know he wants to continue to make some noise and try to jump people on an AHL deal.
You mentioned earlier about, trying to put Derek King trying to put a consistent lineup together, night in and night out. Obviously, there's always going to be challenges with that in the American Hockey League, whether it be injuries or call-ups. But, two guys that have been out of the lineup a little bit recently for the Bears, Matt Strome and Spencer Smallman. Talk about how much they miss those guys. What do they bring to the lineup, and what are they missing right now that without those guys in there?
Well, Matt Strome's turned into a heck of a player, and he's my color commentator now, jumping on the air with me these last couple of games. He's doing it again this weekend. So, hey, he's got a future after hockey, and he's had a lot of fun. He actually volunteered to do it. So, appreciate him for that, but we want him on the ice. He was having a great season, 10 points in the first 15 games, on pace to smash any career high he's had. And all of a sudden, he goes from a really good fourth liner to a penalty killer to a guy that can play in the top six, that he's on the power play this year and was contributing on the power play. It was a clean slate for a lot of these guys and a new coaching staff with a young team. And Matt really was a big part of the team's offensive attack this year. So we miss him a ton, not only for his penalty kill prowess, for how hard he plays the game, he's developed into a good leader, but also for his offense. Because this year it was really showing. He already had 5 goals and was going to blow all his other previous highs completely out of the water. And then you mentioned Spencer Smallman, just a guy that does so many little things that go unnoticed and underappreciated. Great on face-offs, physical, tough to play against, great teammate, hard nose, and he can contribute, offensively. 6 points, I think he had through a dozen games before he got hurt, got a call-up this year, so he's missed some time because of that. So Strome's still out for a little bit, as he was detailing on the air. He's, mentioned that he was in a boot on the air with me the other day with a lower body injury, so still nursing that. I know he wants to get back as soon as he can after the first of the year. While Spencer Smallman skated today in practice, he was in a no-contact jersey still, which isn't a great indication that he's going to be ready to play as far as this weekend being in a no-contact jersey, but trending in the right direction as far as that goes. But both of those guys are sorely missed, as well as Bogdan Trineyev up in the NHL. That's 3 really productive players offensively. Not that they're aligned together, but a line of sorts with 3 guys that are missing right now for the Bears. And other guys have to step up. And, now's the opportunity for some other guys, either up from South Carolina or that were lower in the lineup, or these young kids to kind of make their impact.
And that's what they call job security, right, Zach, for Matt Strome? He's doing quite well in the broadcasting booth with you guys the past couple of games, for sure.
Heck yeah. I mean, look, he's putting Mitch Lamrew and Garrett Mitchell, who I work with all the time, a bit on notice. Hey, step up your game. We got a replacement in the wings right here ready to go. But no, Stromer's a great guy, and just such a great story, as I'm sure we'll talk about. That cup run in 2023, doesn't play, and then the next year he's a valuable guy, but he doesn't play every night. He doesn't start the playoffs, and next thing you know, he's the guy that fans have his jersey because he wins us the Calder Cup with the overtime winner. Just, a guy that I've always loved what he's brought to the table and got to know him as a person a little bit more over the last couple of years. So it's fun having him in the booth now with me, but I look forward to seeing him back on the ice sooner than later. But we'll take the analysis while we can get it. And, yeah, he's keeping himself busy and valuable while he's hurt.
Definitely love the interaction between him and Mitch during the broadcast, for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's Mitch keeps me on my toes up there. We've been together for all 10 seasons now, and he says some quirky stuff and some fun stuff that make me laugh, and he's excited. He's a true fan of it. He's not afraid to jump in if we score every now and then. But he's a legend, man, and I'm so glad I get to work with him. A good personal friend, and he and Stromer love that banter. I think Mitch said, it's nice to have another former player up here to bounce some stuff off of. And I go, what? Yeah, because that other guy up in the booth with you is an idiot, huh? So we have fun with it, and it's a real enjoyable thing. Garrett Mitchell does a great job, and we're doing simulcast TV coverage as well. So that's the cool thing about Hershey, guys. We got some of these legends that have made this place their home, and not every American Hockey League city can say that, but guys have wanted to stick around here in central Pennsylvania, and that's how special Hershey was to them. So getting to work with some of them and some other guys like Freddie Cassivi and Dave Fenves over the years, who are both Bears Hall of Famers, I'm pretty blessed, because not every guy in the American League has a color person on the air with them. Not everybody has a former player that's a legend, providing color commentary on the air with them. So pretty lucky in that aspect for sure.
Zach, the Bears looked like they were kind of hitting their stride a little bit there in the early to mid part of November, kind of getting into late November. And then I would kind of say with maybe that the second game there in Cleveland, the 5-3 loss, it seems like since then the results have been a little uneven. I was doing some quick math. I may have this wrong, but I see in that stretch there, I think there's something like 3 for 19, 3 for their last 19 on the power play. What do you see now in the power play right now? What maybe isn't happening? What's part of the struggles? Now, granted, I saw they did get a power play goal last night, but what are you seeing lately out of the power play?
Yeah, I think it's been really good on the road. It's top 3 power play on the road in the American Hockey League, and it just hasn't translated at home. It's just trying to be too fancy, buying into when the fans are yelling to shoot, or it just hasn't gone the way overall at home, where the Bears are a better road team than at home. So being at home these last little bit, of course, it hasn't been as on point or as sharp as we'd like to see it this year as far as the results go. I think there's some good puck movement. It has been a revolving door. Not that that's an excuse. As you said, that's life in the American Hockey League. There's been some pieces like Protas and Crystal that have been there on the power play, but right now it's just kind of a lack of finish. They need more opportunities to get that puck through. They scored a couple greasy goals in their game against Lehigh Valley that they won last week that were just net front goals, and more of that. Right now it's just not a ton of pucks getting through to the net when the power play isn't working, and struggling to get set up when it's not working. So I look at a guy in Ivan Mirosnichenko who I really think highly of. He's got 7 points in 10 games with the team this year. He's on the cusp of being an NHLer. He's a 23-goal scorer. Last year for the team, he had 7 power play goals. He's got a heck of a slap shot and a heck of a wrist shot. If he's able to get that puck through just a hair quicker, or they're able to find him a little bit more, that's a dynamic guy on the power play. But you're lacking an Ethan Frank on the power play that, of course, has really been the driver of the power play in the offense. So somebody else has to step up. And, I think Mirosnichenko gets one. He's going to break through. But they've tried Louis Belpedio there since Calle Rosen got traded. I think they're still tinkering a little bit with 4 forwards, or they go 5 forwards. So a work in progress right now with a bit of the revolving door. But I like the way that Protas approached the power play goal last night. When in doubt, shoot it. Don't try to make that fancy play. It wasn't a hard shot. He fooled the goaltender with a low shot along the ice. And, I think this team, when they get off a little bit, and the coaching staff has said it, Brian Helmer has said it, it's trying to be a bit too fancy. And that's great if you want to be a passer and you want to rack up the assists, and it's awesome that you're unselfish, but sometimes you just need to call your own number and take that shot. And I think that's what Protas did in yesterday's game, and want to see a little more of that, a little more urgency getting that puck to the net from the team.
Zach, at times this season, the Bears have shown the signs of promise. They've had the offensive talent. Obviously, we already talked about that on the team. Also, signs of the very inexperienced young team that they have, too. Derek King always, in his press conference, a man that doesn't mince words in his press conferences at all. He always talks about them gelling and getting into his system. Do you think at some point in time the Bears start buying into the system that Derek King is bringing to the Hershey Bears? Because certainly, I got to tell you, I love his press conferences at the end of the games, because there's no guy, I think, in the AHL that tells you the way that he tells you in those press conferences at the end of the game. But at some point in time, do you think the Bears will buy into the system of Derek King?
I think we're seeing it in spurts right now, and that's just being a young team where there's no ill will trying to go away from the system. It's just a sheer fact of junior tendencies, or just not being consistent in your game creep in. Because when the team is playing into that system, like they have for 3 periods in certain games, or in spurts like the Wilkes-Barre game where they're really good in the first period, things have gone very, very well, and why the team had that string of success where they really won 10 of 14, up until this past week. So for me, I think that they have to buy in completely and totally. And for some of the guys, it's just getting some of those tendencies out of their game. And some of the other guys, it's being up in the lineup where they haven't been before, or getting adjusted to professional hockey. And that just takes a little bit of time. So I do see it from the team. I think there's a real belief in the coaches and what they're preaching. From talking to Aaron Ness, the captain of this team, he's been around a lot of really good coaches and had a lot of success in his career. He's told me how communicative that the coaches are in making sure these guys are dialed in with video, with work, with practice. Now there's starting to be a little bit more of button pushing from the coaching staff of, okay, guys, it's time to dial in here. It's time to get going. We're in December now. This isn't October 14th where, yeah, you're going to make a young mistake. You played 20-plus games in the American Hockey League. You know what it's going to take. It's not always going to be perfect, but we got to be there, 2/3 of the time, 75% of the time, 90% of the time when it's all said and done, hitting our stride. And it's just not quite there yet. So Derek King is a very honest evaluator and coach. You're 100% right. He's not going to sit there and call guys out necessarily by name, but the group as a whole, if they got to play better, he's going to say it. And I love his interactions with the team and in the locker room. And I think he's definitely a player's coach. If you talk to any of the guys, you talk to Garrett Mitchell, who played for him in Rockford, he is a player's coach that goes out of his way to get to know his guys, and they love playing for him. Right now, it's just trying to get that consistency of buying into that system, and a lot of that's just young habits that just have to get out of these guys' system.
Zach, it was pretty early in the season that the Bears made a couple of trades. They traded Callie Rosen, who had mentioned, who was off to a good start. They bring in Corey Schooneman and also bring in Sam Bitten. What do you think? What was the thinking behind making those trades and bringing those players in, and your thoughts on how they've fit in so far?
Yeah, I think it's a deal that really has worked well in the Bears' favor. Callie Rosen was really strong on the power play, so you miss him there and wish him all the best in Springfield. He was a good dude, quieter guy in the dressing room, nice sarcastic, dry sense of humor, but fit in on the ice and on the power play. And that's really where he's made a home on that man advantage and being able to pick up points and being a good defenseman in his own zone as well, but primarily being a point-producing machine on the power play. But I think the Bears saw an opportunity on a guy that they've always liked organizationally in Corey Schooneman, that's a good leader, a little bit more defensive-minded, stay at home, but can add some offense, as we've seen with the Bears. That's a good experienced guy for the young players in the locker room. I think they saw him available. And not only that, Sam Bitten is a player who they've liked and coveted that can add a different element that the team didn't have. So Schooneman's been solid. You swap out defenseman for defenseman. You lose a little on the power play, but you gain a little bit more leadership. You gain a little bit more defensive prowess. But Bitten, I think, is kind of the big piece of this that has helped define the team right now, because he is extremely vocal. Younger team, a little quieter. You need that energy, that spark plug. He's been that. Physicality and toughness, he's added to that. We already have Dalton Smith and Justin Nakbar, but Bitten, not a veteran player. He can go in the lineup anytime, and he can play up and down the lineup. He gets in guys' kitchens. He's intimidating, hard on the forecheck, tough to play against. And then they think there's a little more offensive potential than he showed in his time in Springfield. And that's already come to fruition in his first dozen games or so. He's already scored 3 goals, which is the amount of goals he had almost in 100 games with the Thunderbirds. So they've been able to unlock all of that. He's a great dude in the community, great guy in the locker room, super fun interview, super fun to talk to. But that really shows on the bench and on the ice, that chatter. And I think they needed that aspect a little bit, and a little bit more physicality and toughness that can also add some offense. So he's getting a key opportunity. The secondary piece in a lot of people's mind in that trade is a guy that was just a fighter in Springfield, but he's really come in and been a big piece to this team. So I think that was kind of the motivation behind the deal, that thought it was a move that helped the team in a couple different aspects, and can't argue with any of the results from those guys so far for sure.
But the Bears having such a young team there, Zach, this year, a lot of guys that are just trying to adjust to the AHL right now. A lot of veterans that are on the team, too. You mentioned Aaron Ness, who just played in his 800th career AHL game. Pretty impressive stuff there. Also, Dalton Smith, Brent Leeson, Graham Clark. How are some of those guys helping the younger guys adjust to the AHL from juniors and coming up and just learning a whole new system?
No, absolutely. I think for the young guys coming in there, and sorry, I got cut off for a second there. Sorry to jump on you. I got excited talking about my guy, Aaron Ness, who is one of the best leaders you'll ever find out there. We have a really good leadership core. Really good leadership core for this team, guys. No doubt about that. I think it's a group that definitely, in my time here, we've had some good ones. Dylan McElrath and Garrett Mitchell are great captains, but the leadership core as a whole has got a lot of experience in the American Hockey League. Aaron Ness is a guy that you mentioned, played over 800 games, quietly goes about his business, but everybody has this really immense respect for how he conducts himself. And he as well is a guy that keeps you on your toes, little chirps in the locker room, but he's also not afraid to grab young guys when they need to be grabbed and say, hey, that's not the way we do things. But on top of it, he's also not afraid to pull guys aside and go, hey, we got to step up our game here or there, or call out the group. And Louis Belpedio is a tough customer, great leader in Lehigh Valley. We hated playing against him. Now we got him on our side. So defensively, you have a couple guys like that. And then you mentioned like a Graham Clark. He's an all-star, 25-goal scorer in the league. Guys can go to these players and ask them for advice. A Brett Leeson, who played 3 years in the NHL, they can go to him and go, hey, what's it going to take to be an all-star at this level? What's going to take to be a National Hockey League player? For a guy like Ness, what's it going to take to be playing well into my 30s and have a long career in professional hockey? So I think a lot of them lead by example. You had a Dylan McElrath that was the sheriff out there on the ice, more of a vocal guy than some of the leaders we have right now. But it's a really good group that has been able to get the most out of him. And I think Ness, I've never had a guy in my time in Hershey that the other players have talked about just, I want to do everything like Aaron Ness. I want to play the game like Aaron Ness. I want to skate like Aaron Ness. I want to lead like Aaron Ness. He is a guy that just people gravitate to with the way that he conducts himself, and a great choice to be the leader of this team. And Dylan McElrath was a heck of a leader. Following in his footsteps is difficult for anybody, but being around the team day in and day out, I know what Aaron Ness does for this group, and he's beloved in that locker room and by the coaching staff. We're lucky to have him guiding us through this kind of transitional time where we have a young team.
Zach, one of the we talked a little bit about, well, we've touched a lot here on some of the younger guys. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Ilya Protas and Andrew Crystal. Any other young players you see on this team right now that maybe, I don't know, kind of maybe flying a little under the radar right now that maybe, have some tremendous upside that Bears fans should be keeping their eyes on and should be getting excited about?
Yeah, I think that Ryan Chesley is a big prospect for the Capitals, and he's still young, and I think he's going to be a good NHL player. Growing pains like all young defensemen go through, but I really believe that he can move that puck and be an impact player at the NHL level. Wouldn't say he's flying under the radar because he's a bit highly regarded with it being a high draft pick at University of Minnesota, but one that I will say is flying under the radar a little bit that I think we've seen of late is defenseman David Gucciardi. He's a 7th-round draft pick. I know when he came in last year, someone from the organization, the Capitals, told me they thought, hey, Gucciardi's our most improved prospect that wasn't in professional hockey this past year from the time we drafted the time he is now. 7th-round pick, right? It's a little bit of a crapshoot at that point. You're taking your best available guy, but you hope they play professional hockey with the 7th-round pick. That's the last round of the draft. And he's been good. He's got 6 points in 17 games. He's a plus player for the team this year. He skates really well, and he's got a hard shot. He's kind of been I want to say a pleasant surprise because he came in last year and impressed in his cup of coffee at the end, scoring in his first game, but he's settling in. And again, there's growing pains for all these guys. There's been some games where, he's dealt with huge players and he's bounced right back up, but we're seeing him also had a little snarl to his game, which is always a good thing from a defenseman, and dropped the gloves for his teammates a couple of times, and he's got a good personality in the room. So that's a guy for me that I think is going to play National Hockey League games and has a real good chance of making it, that necessarily isn't on the fast track with being a 7th-rounder and playing his whole collegiate career and maybe needing some time to develop in Hershey, but has really surprised me with the way that he's integrated and worked out. And another guy that I like is Eric Smatejko. The offense necessarily isn't there compared to like a Protas, but I think he's got a good shot of being an NHLer with his size, with his hockey sense, with his skill. Is a bottom 6 guy right now, but I'm sure he's just turned 20. The offensive potential over the next couple of years will probably be unleashed as well, that he's had playing internationally for Latvia and as well as in the major junior ranks.
One guy that we haven't talked about is the new bench coach, Zach. Talk a little bit about Derek King coming into the mix. Of course, Todd Nelson moving on to the Penguins after 3 seasons. The back-to-back Calder Cup wins as well with Todd Nelson. Just talk a little bit about how he has meshed into the Hershey organization. And a lot of the veteran guys moving on to play overseas from last year, inheriting almost a brand-new team this season. How has he meshed into Hershey and the culture of the Hershey Bears hockey?
Yeah, I really like working with Coach King, and he's a guy that brings institutional knowledge of playing so long in the National Hockey League. And not only did he play, like he's a player that completely flies under the radar. He's a 40-goal scorer once and a 30-goal scorer a ton of times. He's a great Islander and had this fantastic career. And now he's in it for the love of the game because he loves coaching young players. He's not worried about getting back to the NHL as a coach. He likes the challenge of working with young players in the American Hockey League. Much different coach in the aspect of how he just kind of like as an interview he is for me to work with than Todd Nelson. Todd Nelson was a little longer-winded with his thoughts. They were both very honest, while Coach King is shorter, old school, to the point, quick, in and out with his questions, with his answers, with his interviews, with the media. But like you said, he's not afraid to call it like it is, and I love that about him. So he's a quieter guy with a really dry, sarcastic sense of humor with some really funny one-liners. that's why I think he gains the trust of the players. He gets to know them personally, and he's not afraid to joke around with them a little bit. But when he needs to be hard on them, he's hard on them. There's a practice the other day they called him out and said, wake the F up. It's time to get going. It's time to dial in. And I love that, where he can really be there to lean on, to be there if you're a young person just trying to find your way in the world in professional hockey, but he can also be a tactician that's going to push the buttons and push you to be better. He's had a good career developing young talent. Now there's an added pressure compared to other organizations he's been as a head coach. You also need to win. So that's a challenge for anyone that comes into Hershey here. The Capitals want you to develop the next group of Washington Capitals, but along the way, the Capitals and the Bears want to win, and they believe that development and winning go hand in hand. So getting the most out of this team and finding a way to win hockey games, that's a challenge for any coach. But for him particularly, coming in, trying to get the best out of both of it is something that I think he's the right guy for. But he's very similar to Todd Nelson in the sense that he can sit back in the rocking chair, or he can go in there and push the buttons when he needs to. But he works and relies on heavily his assistants for their expertise and knowledge, and is not afraid to give them tasks or let them own certain things. Nelly was really good at that, as is Derek King. So excited to see how he continues to grow and develop as a coach here in Hershey, but a real good staff with Nick Bootland still around from the Calder Cup Championships, and Brent Thompson, who's had a long coaching career in there as well. So, definitely a ton of experience in that room, and enjoyed getting to know Derek King here in these last couple months.
The Bears currently sit at 12-9-1 after last night's game against Providence. They get the Bruins again coming up on Friday night. Kind of right in the middle right now in the Atlantic Division with Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and Providence up towards the top. Your thoughts on how the division has played out so far? Any surprises, or do you feel like it's kind of slotted in maybe how you thought it would in the early going?
The two teams there at the top right now are always good, especially, regular season. Wilkes-Barre always has a good club in my time here. And they always have had a ton of success. It's just been guys going up to Pittsburgh or injuries, and it just hasn't worked out in the playoffs for them for a variety of reasons over the years. What they had on paper coming in, the depth that they had, the goaltending that they had, I circled them and said that's going to be a tough 10 matchups against these guys, and so far they're as advertised. Providence as well. I think the Bruins organization went out and signed a bunch of really good players that can go up and help in the NHL that are currently, some of them are there. Alex Steves, for example, is up in the NHL, so the Bruins are even a bit depleted, but goaltending for them, Michael DiPietro is one of the best in the league, and they're always a physical, tough-to-play against team. Some of their coaches were former Hershey Bears coaches or players, so we know what we're getting out of them. So I'm not surprised with those two teams. I'm not surprised that Lehigh Valley is in the mix. They're a heavy team to play against, but now they have a little new system and are better defensively, in my mind, than they were the last couple of years with the new coaching staff there. So not necessarily surprised that they're in the mix as well. I did not expect Springfield to have the poor start like they did. I like some of the young prospects that they have. The Blues have now been decimated by injuries, but the T-Birds have pulled out of the basement a little bit there. They're closer to inching in with Bridgeport, Hartford. But remember, 6 of the 8 teams make the playoffs, so you just got to get into the dance. But I will say this, nothing against this Hershey Bears team, nothing against the other teams that are not Wilkes-Barre or Providence, because there's still a lot of runway left. But I do think that where the Bears are, it was an expectation for the team to get that bye, and they wanted that bye being 1 or 2. I think it's going to be difficult just because of how good this division is to get that bye this year. So then you got to play in that best of 3, which can be a little bit scary because it's such a short series and not a lot of room for runway with the wonky format that the AHL playoffs are. So there's some clear front runners right now, but you guys have seen it. Wilkes-Barre, half of them could be up in Pittsburgh by the end of the month, and they could tail off. Or same thing with Providence, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. My excitement is, like I said, we're a young team, so I think we're going to be a lot better team in February and March and April than we are right now. So hopefully, even with a lot of those road games, we're hitting our stride, making some noise, and playing good hockey going into the postseason, wherever the chips may fall in the division.
Zach, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this past weekend. Pretty memorable weekend up there in Hershey with the Hall of Fame night, inducting a lot of the fan favorites here in Hershey. That one night, Alexander Giroux, you had Chris Bork, you had Boyd Kane, Mike McHugh as well, all going into the Bears Hall of Fame. Just talk about what those guys meant to this franchise and how special the weekend was, too.
Really cool to be part of the Hall of Fame here. I think just the tradition and history is what I was so excited about joining this organization. The very first day I had working for the Bears, I went and spent 2 hours just sitting at Hershey Park Arena, and just you could feel the history. And that's what really I love about this organization is everyone's got to raise the bar because the standard has been set so high by the people before them in the broadcast booth, on the ice, coaching staff, whatever it may be. So to have some of those legends go in this year, and this truly was a class of legends, it always is, but some real recent ones, it was really fun to be a part of. I worked with Chris Bourque. I got to MC his jersey retirement, help him write his speech for that. And that was a lot of fun because he's one of the first veteran leaders that we had in my time in Hershey back in 2016-17 towards the end of his career. So getting to see him get his heyday then and now and see him again and his family and his kids are getting so big was awesome. But for me, everyone talked about we're only 6 years removed from the 09-10 team that won 60 games. It was legendary. Probably the best team in American Hockey League history. There's other Bears teams you could argue with them, but 60 wins in 80 games, and they just dominated teams. And everyone always talked about Aucoin, Bourque, and Giroux, Aucoin, Bourque, and Giroux, and then a lot of other cast of characters as well. So now to see all three of those guys in the Hall of Fame, and Alex Giroux is this legendary goal scorer, really awesome for the fans that followed the team then. And those guys to get their moment in the sun was fabulous. And Mike McHugh was another guy. I've got to know him a little bit, got to know his family a little bit, stuck around in the area. First guy from the 97 team to get into the Hall of Fame, and that's long overdue there. And Boyd Kane's just a heart and soul, hard-nosed type of guy. And, one of my old friends on the Old Barn Hockey Show that we used to do, texted me and said he thought Boyd Kane had one of the best shifts in Bears history that single-handedly willed them to a Game 7 victory against Portland back in 2006. So some real true legends of the Bears, and they always are, but this class just seemed extra special because of how many of them played in recent years and at the Giant Center. Now to see them on the wall and in the Hall of Fame at the Giant Center forever, it's only fitting. So it's exciting as well because a lot of the guys that were here for the Cup runs in 2023 and 2024, someday those guys are going to be Hall of Famers, and they're going to have their moments just like Bourque and Boyd Kane and Giroux did the other day. And I look forward to seeing those guys get their heyday because they're near and dear to my heart. But it was a little extra special for Borky for sure, knowing him personally and getting to see his family get to see that moment again, especially this kid's a little older now.
Zach, this is an AHL schedule question for you. So every year the Bears will, when the schedule comes out, they, once a year or twice a year, they dip their toe into the Western Conference Central Division. I believe they got 4 this year with Rockford. Do you ever foresee a time where the Bears would have a crossover with someone from the Pacific Division in the regular season?
I would love that. I've been pushing Brian Helmer and everybody, get us to San Diego or get us to Henderson, get us somewhere different. Just when you get 10 years in the league, I love going to all these other cities, but even a trip out to the Midwest, which is where I'm from, so near and dear to my heart, it's special just because you get to go and do something different. But here's the biggest roadblock for it, why I'm not saying that it wouldn't happen, because we do see Charlotte. They played, I think, in San Diego and San Jose, so it could happen eventually, but it takes 2 to tango. You have to be willing to go out there, and they have to be willing to come to you. The Bears could not just say, with the way the schedule works out, we want to go play in San Diego, and the San Diego Gulls say, sure, come on down, we'll take that. They would have to reciprocate and then come back to Hershey as well. And that's been a bit of a challenge unless there's a really good airport flight path like the city of Charlotte might have for some of these teams. Because the Pacific Division, until a couple years ago, if you guys might remember, they weren't even playing the same number of games as the rest of the rest of the teams in the league. They were fighting so hard to go up from 68 games to get to a uniform number, while the rest of the league was at 76, and eventually we all got it to 72. So there isn't, I don't think, as of today, an appetite necessarily to do that crossover from a lot of those teams there. We saw it firsthand just how expensive it is for any organization to fly cross country. Doing it with Coachella the last couple of years and going to the finals and chartering a plane. And kudos to Hershey Entertainment Resorts. It was first class, everything that we did. They wanted to give us the best chance to win, but that cost, I think, everybody a pretty penny, the Firebirds as well, and the Bears as well, just how expensive something like that is, and the logistics of getting the gear in and out and then playing a game the next couple days in whatever city it might come next. So, look, with the way that modern technology is, I would never count it out. I'll continue pushing on my end as much as possible because I would love to do some games in those cities, but there are some challenges to it right now. So the Midwest has kind of been a good, happy medium. we're in Chicago and Iowa. We've been in Milwaukee and Grand Rapids. And this year we go back to Rockford for the first time in a handful of years. So I hope we can continue doing that with at least the teams in the Central Division and maybe see that expanded in the future. Because, yeah, send me some rays, send me some sun. That's for sure. Let me get to a new ring.
Zach, before we wrap up the podcast, you have coined a lot of great phrases in your time here in Hershey and Hershey Bears hockey. Sweeter by the dozen is one of them, but I think more so the teddy bear toss each and every single year. You have coined the phrase sweet, cuddly mayhem. You got to be getting some royalties off of that, man. How did you come up with that phrase during the teddy bear toss game?
Yeah, I guess I'm really glad we had the success that we did to win the Calder Cup to be that. And, wherever my career takes me, I'll always be the sweet, cuddly mayhem teddy bear toss guy. And I got no problem with that because it's turned to this really cool event that we've done. When I came here, I think my first year we had a little over 20,000 bears. And I was like, whoa, that's a lot of teddy bears. And then people started realizing we could potentially hit the record, which was 28,000 at the time, and getting to have the ESPN coverage that we did and seeing it go international all over the world. And there's my call with a language that I don't speak or understand over top of it from news coverage in whatever country it may be. It's really cool to see that, especially for our town, our community, and for the good that it does with our Hershey Bears Cares program, the smiles that it brings to kids. But Sweet Cuddly Mayhem, I would love to take 100% credit for it, but it was actually first used by the Bears by a former employee of ours who no longer works for the organization, but helped out with social media. On social media, we had been discussing some ideas, and we had been bouncing around something with sweet and cuddly, and that's what he went with, and I really liked it, and I said, I'm going to use that someday. He said, sure, absolutely, that's great. So I think it was 2 years later, it was the first thing that came to mind for me. I didn't know where I was going to use it in the call. I didn't plan on just screaming it right after we scored, but when I looked around and paused for a second after, I think it was Axel Janssen-Fialbi that scored the goal that year, and that's just what I thought. I knew I wanted to say that phrase somewhere in there, and that was the appropriate time for it. So people always ask, did you script things? Did you know you're going to say this? I know I want to use certain things, but I don't know how I want it to come out of my mouth. I don't know if I want it to be the first thing I say. I never want to be sitting there reading a script of what I want to say. You can have things in mind, but how it flows has to be naturally. So that's how it went. It went loud and boisterous right after the goal happened. I think the James Corden was doing late night at the time. He no longer is. Showed that off and was like, I've never heard a man say the words sweet, cuddly mayhem before. And it kind of took off like wildfire. So it's cool to see it on the shirts here. It's cool to see it being used by other teams. Maybe I should have asked for royalties. Kidding. It's all in good fun, but
Right.
It's definitely something that I'm proud of what has been built here in Hershey. Kudos to our fans for making this the big event it is. Like Brock and Gabby, who collect thousands upon thousands of bears every year. They really deserve the credit. And if me yelling out those words and sounding like a bit of a fool has got a little more eyeballs on it, I'm all for it because it's the great cause that it does. So that's a fun one. I look forward to that game every year. It has become something that is a lot of work behind the scenes. A lot of people deserve credit for, but that always makes me laugh going back and seeing that late night clip and whatever James Corden had to say about it. And it definitely is a highlight of my career for sure, and that's a highlight of the season every year. So I'm lucky to have that. I'm lucky to be able to call the Calder Cups that I have and be a Hershey Bear and get the opportunities with the Capitals, but that's definitely up there as well. It doesn't rank nearly as high as the Calder Cups or the NHL games, but for what it is as an event as a whole, for the good that we do for the community, it's at the top of the list for that for sure.
I've got one final question for you. This is a multiple choice question, so
all right.
I'm going to enlist Chase's help to.
You're going to do it, aren't you? You're going to do it.
He's going to play. Yeah, you're going to play. He's going to play a clip for you of one of your calls, and then I've got a multiple choice question. So, do you have that ready to go, Chase?
I do, and John Walton calls this the best call in Hershey Bears radio history. So here's the call.
All right. Borgstrom at his feet. Right done. Pushes it behind the net. Gets around Evans. Uses his big frame. A goal down low. Bouncing around. Borgstrom after it. In front. They score! They score! Mike Vecchione! The Bears have done it! They're Calder Cup champions! The Hershey Bears for the 12th time in franchise history! It's sweeter by the dozen! They have done it!
right, so with that setup, Zach,
I love that. I love just thinking back to that moment, guys. That was what a time.
my question to you is, which of the following would be your favorite call during a Bears game? A, Mike Vecchione's Game 7 OT clincher in the 2023 Calder Cup Final against Coachella Valley. B, Matt Strome's Game 6 OT clincher in the 2024 Calder Cup Final against Coachella Valley. Or C, the mascot race at this past September's Frogiversary event right here in our studio.
Toss up.
Well, C's a tough contender because I think I had a farm show milkshake in hand during that, so life was pretty good at that exact moment. And that's the first. I once called a pig race at a county fair when I was back in college on the radio, but a mascot race was the first. That was a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys having me, but that's a really tough one to pick between A and B. I'll give you a two-part answer, and not to skirt the question. I would say, as a moment, I don't think anything tops Mike Vecchione's goal. As John mentioned, the circumstances of how that was won. Game 7, overtime. We got beat down in games 1 and 2, losing 9-0 combined in the two games. And then we're down 2-0 in game 7. Nobody gave us a chance. And, the way that it was in that series, there's bad blood between the two teams to do it and do it like that. And for Mike Vecchione, who started the roar and was the heartbeat of the team, that was legendary. And I think my call fits that moment. It's very, very emotional. There's things that I wish I could have done differently on it. Wish my voice could have been a little more controlled on the word cup, or, wish that ultimately I could have said this or that. But I think it fits the moment. And if you watch the Sweeter by the Dozen documentary, all the players on the ice are saying, we did it. Like, there was this, not shock, because they believed in themselves, but holy cow, we did it. So I was really glad that I said that in there, because I just thought it encapsulated what it meant for that team. Is like, we did the damn thing. Like, we defied all the odds. We won the cup. Game 7 on the road. This is ours. And that team was so legendary and so special and such a great group of guys. For me, as a call, personally, I was glad to have a second time to do it. So there was little things I could refine. I do like the call better on Stromer's from my perspective. I think the moment, as legendary as that one was, doing it at home, Game 7 is really tough to top. So I agree with Johnny's assessment, and I appreciate his kind words, because any of his calls could top mine as far as that goes. But I like a little bit more about the call and the excitement and the fans behind it. That was special too. But I don't sit there and listen to myself a ton, except to try to listen in and get better. But those clips have been played a lot in my house, just because you're watching the video with it. I love every one of those people, coaching staff, players, front office, the organization that I got to work with, and to see them get to live the dream and do it in dramatic fashion. You can't dream of anything more as a broadcaster. So I feel extremely privileged to call not only 1, 2 championships and do them both in overtime. If I retire tomorrow, if I die tomorrow, I feel pretty damn fortunate to have been able to do both of those. So we're heck of an organization, heck of teams. But long story short, the moment of A will never be topped. But I do like parts of the call of B a little bit better. Yes, whatever it takes. Just bring the milkshakes.
Zach, we love the insight. We look forward to the games this weekend, Friday and Saturday, the last 3 games here coming up for the Chocolate and White on their homestand. We want to wish you and your family, of course, a very happy holiday season too, Zach. We appreciate the time, and of course, go Bears.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. This was a blast. Thanks for doing this. Anytime, would love to hop back on and chat, and this is great stuff that you guys are doing. So thanks for the partnership. Thanks for the time. And, yep, go Bears. Absolutely. Happy holidays to you and all the viewers and listeners.